Hey gang, and welcome back. These videos are brought to you by Card Conduit, the best place to sell your unused collection fast and easily. 401 Games, Canada's top shop for all your hobby and TCG needs. Dragon Shield, the strongest sleeves for your strongest decks. Moxfield, the easiest way to store and share your deck lists. And Foil Armor, flatten your foils fast. Corwin wins the die roll and starts us off. As a pre-game effect, he's able to put a Leyline Axe onto the battlefield, then draws for his first turn and plays a Spire of Industry. Fred's just got a Prairie Stream which comes in tapped. Charles draws, playing an Underground River and tapping it for colorless for Sol Ring. David draws, playing a Swamp and casting his own Sol Ring. He's got a follow-up though with a Talisman of Indulgence, and he ships it to Corwin. Corwin just plays a Wooded Foothills and cracks it, losing 1 to go and find a land, passing while searching. Fred plays a Plains and pays 2 for an Arcane Signet. Charles draws and plays an Island. He then pays 3 for a Frantic Search, drawing 2 and discarding 2, and then untaps his 2 lands. David draws and plays the land half of a Witch-Blessed Meadow, which comes in tapped, and he passes. Corwin plays Kessig Wolfrun, and follows up by casting Red 13, Proud Warrior. He passes to Fred after that. Fred's got a Sunpetal Grove, and has enough mana to cast Yuna, and ships it to Charles. Charles plays a Plaza of Heroes, and then casts Y'shtola. He passes, and during the end step, David casts Big Score, discarding a Ruin Grinder, and then drawing 2 and making 2 treasures. David draws and plays an Isolated Chapel. He casts Celeste, taking 1 from his Talisman. As she enters, he discards 3 and draws 4, and then casts a Tortured Existence. He follows that up with a Mind Stone, and then casts Reanimate, targeting the Rune Grinder. David then takes 6 damage as it comes back, and gets to put a +1/+1 counter onto each of his creatures from Celeste's ability. He passes after that. Corwin draws, plays a Sunpetal Grove, and then pays 3 mana for Sunforger. Fred's got a Fabled Passage, sacrificing it for an island. He then follows it up with Freed from the Real on Yuna, and is able to make infinite taps and untaps with Yuna's ability. He does this enough times so that the Kami of Whispered Hopes he casts next will come in with 9,998 counters, plus because of its ability, add an additional 1 for 9,999. He passes after that. Charles plays a Godless Shrine, tap for turn, and then casts Snuff Out and targets the Kami. And unfortunately we were so focused on the combo, we forget that Yuna would have transferred the +1/+1 counters onto herself, and Y'shtola drains the table for 2. Charles then casts a Parasitic Impetus on the Ruin Grinder, draining the table for another 2. He wraps things up by casting Tataru Taru, and lets Fred draw a card off of it, and makes a tap treasure token. And Charles then draws a card from his end step from Y'shtola's ability. David draws, and plays a Plains. He casts Angel of Ruins, and as it comes in, exiles Freed from the Real and the Impetus. He then goes to combat. He swings the Rune Grinder and Celeste at Charles, and Charles blocks Celeste, but takes 8 from the Rune Grinder. After that, David passes, and Charles draws a card from Y'shtola's ability during the end step. Corwin's got a Bonder's Enclave for turn, and he casts Cloud. He moves the Leyline Axe onto him from the ability, and then swings Red 13 at Fred, and Cloud at Charles. Charles takes the hit for 10, and Fred takes the hit for 3. Corwin gets to draw a card from attacking, and during the end step, Charles draws 1 for someone taking more than 4. Fred's turn has him playing a tapped Lush Portico, and he keeps his Surveilled card on top. He then plays an Everflowing Chalice, multi-kicking it once and passing. Charles plays a Tainted Field and casts Propaganda. Y'shtola drains the table for 2, and Charles then main phase casts a Curtain's Call, targeting the Rune Grinder and Cloud. This drains the table for a further 2, and with the Rune Grinder going to the graveyard, Fred, Corwin, and David discard their hands and draw a fresh 7, and during the end step, Charles then draws a card from Y'shtola. David plays a Mountain and casts Recruiter of the Guard. He goes to find a Flare of the Hatebound, putting it to hand, and then casting it and passing. Corwin's got a brush land, and he casts Sword of Feast and Famine. He follows it up by casting Professor Hojo, and then once he's out, is able to click the sword onto Red 13 for free. He also gets to draw a card. Going to combat, Corwin sends Red 13 at Fred, but Fred's ready with a snap, bouncing Red 13 back to Corwin's hand. After that, Corwin passes. Fred draws and uses Yuna to help cast an Evolution Sage, which comes in with 2+1/+1 counters. Fred then plays a Command Tower and proliferates. He follows up by casting Vorinclex, Monstrous Raider. He then passes, and during the end step, Charles delves away some cards to cast Dig Through Time, and drains the table for 2. Charles has got an Urborg for turn, and he casts Phyresis on Y'shtola, and follows that up by casting a Martial Impetus, targeting the Angel of Ruins. Y'shtola deals 2 to each opponent, but instead of giving that many poison counters, it's halved because of Vorinclex. After that, Charles passes. David plays an Altar of Dementia, but Charles counters it with a Force of Negation, and Y'shtola drains the table again, giving Charles' opponents another poison counter. David then casts a Night's Whisper, losing 2 and drawing 2. He plays a Swamp, and then unearths Priest of Felrites. It comes in and deals 2 to Professor Hojo thanks to the Flare ability, and David then sacrifices the Priest to bring back the Rune Grinder. Celeste's ability is triggering, but putting no counters on stuff because of Vorinclex, and the Flare deals 7 to Y'shtola this time. David then swings the Angel of Ruins at Corwin, and the Flare at Fred. They each take their hits, and David then passes, with Charles drawing during the end step. Corwin's got a Rogue's Passage, and recast Cloud. With Cloud coming in, he gets the trigger, putting the sword onto him, and he swings Cloud at Fred. Fred takes the hit, and discards a card, while Corwin gets to untap his lands. In his post-combat main phase, Corwin then casts Valakut Awakening, and bottoms 4 cards to draw 5. After that, Corwin casts Sid, Free Flyer Pilot, and passes. During the end step, Fred casts Enlightened Tutor, finding and putting on top Penim's Aura. Fred draws, and taps Yuna to help cast Riku, who enters with 4+1/+1 counters. He then plays a Forest, and proliferates again. Fred then goes to combat, swinging the Evolution Sage at David, who takes the hit. In his post-combat main phase, Fred then enchants Yuna with Penim's Aura, and passes. Charles draws and replays Y'shtola, and once she's out, casts an Azorius Signet, and passes. David draws, and in his main phase, ephemerates on Celeste, which as she comes back in, has David discarding 6 to draw 7. He then plays a Graven Cairns, and sacrifices the Mind Stone to draw a card. He then casts Mortify and targets the Rune Grinder. This time around, everyone discards their hand and draws a fresh 7. And David then follows up by casting Imperial Recruiter, going to find a Viscera Seer. Unfortunately for the table, with Vorinclex being out normally being a problem, it's actually helping David by removing the +1/+1 counters from Undying if the Flare of the Hatebound were to come back. This means David is able to sacrifice it infinitely, and is able to deal enough damage to take everyone out of the game, and wins. Game review time. So this was the second game we filmed with the upgraded precons. And surprisingly, the decks that I thought would do the best did the worst, and the decks that I wasn't super interested in really actually made me interested. I think Celeste and Y'shtola are pretty sweet, and they have some really fun ways to build around them. Y'shtola in particular has really got me going, and not just because she's a cat girl. Cloud on the other hand is going to become Tifa, and Yuna I think I just need to tweak a bit more to make her more consistent. I will say the most impactful card this game was Vorinclex, as it helped Fred out, but also hindered David until it didn't, and actually became an enabler for David, which was pretty cool to see. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, but it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.